I've been thrown from bikes before. Hell, I've left skin on more asphalt than most folks have walked in their entire lives. But that night, lying on the shoulder of Route 19 with my leg twisted under the wrecked weight of my Harley, I felt something different, an ache that went down to the bone like a reminder that I wasn't 30 anymore, and that the road had a damn good memory. The headlights of passing cars stretched into blurry comets. I tasted metal. My ears rang. But I was still breathing, still conscious, still too damn stubborn to let fate take her win. When the ambulance arrived, the EMTs worked fast. They cut open my jeans, splinted my leg, slid an oxygen mask over my face. Professional, efficient. They didn't flinch at the sight of my cut, the leather vest heavy with the death serpent's patch across the back, the patch that kept most men cautious and a few men stupidly brave. It wasn't until I got rolled under those hospital lights that the energy shifted. The ER smelled like disinfectant, fear, and old secrets. I'd seen the inside of too many hospitals, patched bullet wounds in Nevada, stitched knife slices in Arizona, survived a meth lab explosion in Mississippi. But this time, I wasn't bleeding out. I was just banged up, beat down, needing pain meds and a brace. Nothing complicated. Then he walked in, Dr. William Hargreaves. Tall, crisp white coat, trimmed beard, eyes that scanned like a scanner app. Cold, calculating, too still. At first, he didn't say a word. Just looked at my chart, then at me, then at the cut, hung over the back of the chair like a shadow with teeth. "What club is this?" he asked, tapping the leather with his pen. "Death Serpent's MC," I muttered. "Based out of Red Rock. Why?" He didn't answer. His gaze sharpened, dissecting me like I was an insect pinned to a corkboard. He checked my vitals, asked routine questions, pressed against my leg until I winced. Then, during the exam, he reached into the breast pocket of my cut, a place no man touches unless he wants trouble, and pulled out a small orange pill bottle. My medication. Blood pressure meds I'd been on for years. "What's this for?" he asked. "Keeping my heart from exploding?" I said dry. "Doctor's orders." Something flickered across his face. Disgust. Rage? Hard to tell, but it wasn't good. "You shouldn't mix certain substances with your lifestyle," he said. "My lifestyle?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the motorcycle or breathing?" He didn't smile, didn't blink, just pocketed the bottle like it belonged to him. "That needs to be updated. I'll take care of it." "Mind giving it back?" I asked, voice flat. He didn't even acknowledge the question. Instead, he scribbled something on my chart, whispered a few words to a nurse, and stepped into the hallway. The nurse brought me pills, a different shape, different color, but said they were my usual prescription from the hospital supply. I didn't like the smell of it. I didn't like the doctor's face. I sure as hell didn't like feeling powerless on a gurney with a fractured leg and tubes taped to my arms. But pain makes a man compromise with things he shouldn't. I swallowed the pills. Big mistake. For the next 48 hours, something was wrong inside me. Wrong in a way pain alone couldn't explain. My heartbeat stuttered, then raced. My thoughts slipped, scattering like loose bolts on concrete. I woke drenched in sweat, shaking so hard I had to grip the rails of the bed to keep from convulsing. When I asked the nurses what the doctor had switched me to, they told me everything was standard protocol. But their eyes avoided mine. Their voices dropped. Their hands never stopped moving, like motion could hide guilt. By the third day, I felt like death was pacing just outside the room, waiting for me to blink. That's when I knew. This wasn't the road trying to kill me. This wasn't bad luck. This was deliberate. And I kept thinking about that look in Hargreaves' eyes when he saw my cut, like he'd already decided I didn't deserve to walk out of his hospital alive. The Death Serpents had earned plenty of enemies across the years. Cops, feds, rival clubs, dealers with short tempers and shorter life expectancies. But a doctor? A man sworn to heal? I didn't understand it yet, but I would. And when the truth came, it would come riding hard. A toxicology report in one hand, vengeance in the other. The road wasn't done with me, and I damn sure wasn't done with him. Pain I can handle. I've lived with it longer than I've lived with most women, and it's been more loyal than half the brothers I've buried. But whatever was happening inside me after that doctor switched my meds, that wasn't pain. That was sabotage. Slow, calculated sabotage. By the time the hospital discharged me, I was limping on a brace, carrying a prescription I didn't trust, and sweating cold every 10 minutes like I'd swallowed ice instead of pills. The world kept tilting, sometimes left, sometimes right, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to stay grounded. When the nurse asked if I needed a wheelchair, I told her I'd rather crawl out on my elbows. She didn't argue. 2 of my brothers were waiting outside. Ash, a mountain of a man with prison ink that crawled up his neck, and Hawkeye, who could spot a threat faster than he could finish a cigarette. Both looked me over like they expected to see bullet holes. "You look like hell, Snake," Hawkeye said. feel worse, I muttered. Ash took my hospital bag and slung it into the back of the truck. You sure you're good to leave? Good enough, I lied. But the truth? Every bone, nerve, and drop of blood in my body felt like it was vibrating, like a low electric current ran through me. The ride back to the clubhouse wasn't long, but I spent every mile fighting nausea and trying to keep my heartbeat from sprinting out of my chest. I'd faced ambushes with less fear. When we pulled into the lot, the sun was low, the air thick with the smell of gasoline, barbecue smoke, and that dusty desert wind that never gave a damn about anybody's problems. The guys came out to greet us, clapping my shoulder, cracking jokes, anything to feel normal. But normal had been left behind in that hospital room, under those fluorescent lights, in the doctor's cold stare. Inside the clubhouse, I went straight to my room, dropped onto the bed, and stared at the ceiling until the spinning slowed. For a moment I thought, maybe, just maybe, the worst was passing. It wasn't. That night, the symptoms hit me like a sledgehammer. My heart surged so fast I could feel it shaking my ribs. My vision blurred, doubled, then tripled. Brothers walking past my doorway looked like ghosts overlapping each other. I tried to stand and ended up on the floor, hands pressed to cold wood, sweat dripping off my chin. Every breath felt like it cost me something. Ash found me first. Jesus, Snake, he barked, grabbing my shoulders. You having a damn stroke? Feels like poison, I rasped. Hawkeye was already dialing someone, not 911, never that. We had our own ways. After a quick, tense conversation, he nodded. Doc Ramos will meet us. Back room of Miller's garage. Ramos wasn't a real doctor, not anymore. He'd lost his license years back for prescribing opioids to undercover ATF agents. But the man was a genius with chemicals and had stitched up more bikers than most trauma surgeons. He still owed the club for protecting him when the DEA came sniffing, and favors like that don't expire. The brothers half carried me into the truck. I barely remember the ride, just streetlights flashing overhead like someone flipping a cosmic switch on and off. When we reached Miller's garage, the place was locked but quiet, tools hanging from pegboards like weapons waiting for a war. Ramos was already inside, wiry and twitchy as always, wearing a grease-stained lab coat like some twisted costume. Lay him down, he ordered. They set me on a cleared workbench. Ramos snapped on gloves, grabbed his kit, and started drawing blood. His eyes kept darting to my face, my arms, my pulse. What the hell were you given? He muttered. My usual prescription, I croaked. Or something pretending to be. He didn't laugh, didn't smile. He worked fast, mixing samples with reagents, heating them, checking colors. His hands moved with a clarity only panic can sharpen. 10 minutes later he froze. Not a blink, not a breath. Ramos, Ash growled. Talk. The man swallowed hard, holding the test strip like it was a detonator. This isn't your medication, he said softly. Not even close. I already knew that, but hearing it confirmed dug deep under my skin. What is it then? I asked, pushing myself up on one elbow. A cocktail, Ramos replied. A deadly one. Beta blockers spiked with a vasoconstrictor that should never be combined. Your heart's been fighting itself, Snake. Whoever made this, they were aiming for organ failure, slow death, quiet. Something a coroner would chalk up to complications. Ash swore. Hawkeye punched the metal locker so hard it dented. But me, I just felt cold. Can you tell if it was done at the hospital? I asked. Ramos nodded grimly. The fillers, the binders, even the pill coating, hospital pharmacy grade. Someone swapped your real meds with this. Someone who had access. Someone who wanted plausible deniability. My mind flashed back to Dr. Hargreaves. The way he looked at my cut. The way he pocketed my bottle without permission. The way he acted like my survival was an inconvenience. Ramos ran more tests, talking to himself in frantic whispers. After another few minutes, he handed me a printed toxicology sheet. Numbers, ranges, red flags. It all painted the same picture. You're lucky your body held on, he said. A smaller guy, a weaker heart, he'd be dead already. I stared at the report, my hands trembling, not from the symptoms, but from something darker, something older than medicine or law. He tried to kill me, I said quietly. The words tasted of iron. Ash cracked his knuckles. Say the word, brother. Not yet. Revenge is a dish that takes patience. Planning? Precision? Especially against a man who hides behind a white coat and a hospital badge. But the road had just handed me a new mission. Clear, sharp, and personal. We're not touching him, I said, sliding off the table. Not until I know why. Hawkeye frowned. Why the hell would a doctor want to poison a biker he's never met? I didn't have an answer. Not then, but I damn sure intended to find one. And the truth? It was already crawling toward me. buried in hospital files, in memories the doctor tried to lock away, in mistakes he thought time would erase. Ramos handed me a stabilizing injection and a temporary med regimen that wouldn't kill me. "You need rest," he said, "and no stress." I smirked. "Stress is the only thing keeping me alive." We drove back to the clubhouse in silence. The night air cooled my skin, but it couldn't cool the fire building inside me. A doctor had tried to end me. A man sworn to heal had chosen to kill. And he'd done it because of the cut on my back, the life I lived, the brotherhood I belonged to, the road that shaped me. He thought I wouldn't notice. He thought I wouldn't survive. He thought wrong. By the time the sun rose, I'd made my decision. Tomorrow, I'd start digging. And when I found his reason, his face would be the last thing on earth to forget mine. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling, the toxicology report on my chest like a brick holding me down. My heartbeat was steadier, thanks to Ramos, but every thump reminded me how close it had come to stopping. Not by chance, not by fate, not by the road, by a man in a white coat. When dawn finally cracked open the desert sky, I pulled on my cut, strapped on my boots, and headed for the common room. A few brothers were passed out on couches, empty beer bottles standing like little tombstones around them. Hawkeye was awake, though, leaning against the bar, sipping coffee like it was some kind of survival ritual. "You're up early," he said. "Never went down." He nodded, not asking more. That's the thing about brothers. You don't need to explain the storm if they can already see the clouds. "You really want to dig into this, doctor?" he asked. "I'm not digging," I said. "I'm locating the hole he already dug for me." Hawkeye slid a laptop across the bar. "Figured you'd want this." Now, Hawkeye's a lot of things. Smartass, pessimist, world-class drinker. But what he does better than anyone else is dig up information. In another life, he could have been a private investigator. In this one, he was the club's bloodhound. I opened the laptop. A profile stared back at me. Dr. William Hargreaves, 52. Internal medicine, St. Valerian Regional Hospital. Married, no kids listed, but just below that, in a folder Hawkeye had marked unfiltered. The clean bio started to unravel. Reports, complaints, notes, whispers from staff forms, things hospitals bury under a mountain of paperwork and non-disclosure agreements. A nurse's statement. Dr. Hargreaves refuses certain patients. Bikes seem to trigger him. A suspended resident had written anonymously. He told me once that criminals don't deserve treatment. A malpractice summary. Family settled out of court. Son deceased. Drug-related shooting. That one hit different. I leaned back, rubbing a hand over my jaw. Son died in a drug shooting. Years ago. What kind? Hawkeye clicked open another file. He was 17. Wrong place, wrong time. Shot outside a stash house police were raiding. A small-time dealer panicked, fired wild. Dealer was rumored to be connected to the Iron Vipers MC. A rival club, one we'd fought more times than I could count. "So Hargreaves blames bikers?" I said slowly. "All of us." Hawkeye nodded. "Looks that way. And your cut? It probably lit something up in him, something ugly." I closed the laptop with a soft thud. The pieces were falling into place. Not cleanly, not neatly, but with enough shape to know the picture wasn't pretty. The man didn't just hate me. He hated what he thought I represented. But hate alone isn't motive enough to risk prison, ruin his career, or stain his precious oath. No, there was more. Something personal, something twisted. And I was going to find it. I drove to St. Valerian Hospital with Hawkeye trailing behind me. My legs still ached, but anger made a fine painkiller. I didn't walk through the front doors. I limped, shoulders squared, eyes locked forward. The smell of antiseptic hit me like a memory I wanted to erase. The same nurse who'd handed me those poisoned pills saw me and froze for half a second. Guilt flashed across her face like a bad neon sign. "You're back?" she asked. "Looking for my attending physician," I said. "Dr. Hargreaves isn't on shift right now. I'll wait." She frowned, but before she could argue, a voice came from behind me. "You can't be here without an appointment." A clipboard jockey, administrator type, cheap tie, expensive hair gel. "Good thing I'm not here for a checkup," I said. "Sir, you're intimidating staff. I'm going to have to ask." I stepped closer, not touching him, just letting him catch the scent of trouble. "I want to see Hargreaves. Dr. Hargreaves is a respected..." I pulled the toxicology report from my pocket and slapped it onto his clipboard. His eyes scanned the red flags, his lips parting in slow, dawning horror. "This," he whispered. "Where did you get..." "From someone who actually cares whether people live or die." His throat bobbed. "Mr. Snake, this report, these values aren't consistent with your prescribed medication?" "No kidding. This is potentially criminal." I leaned in. "Now we're speaking the same language." The man looked around nervously. Please, let me check his schedule. While he scrambled, Hawkeye wandered down the hall, pretending to look at bulletin boards, but he always had one ear on me. The administrator came back pale. He left early last night. Didn't log out properly. That's against protocol. Where does he go after shifts? I'm not allowed. Try again. He swallowed. He volunteers part-time at the county grief counseling center. Ever since his son... Bingo. Anger and something colder slid down my spine. Address, I said. He scribbled it without hesitation. Hawkeye followed me out to the parking lot. You going there alone? Yeah. You sure that's smart? No, I said. But it's necessary. He nodded. Sometimes necessity outranks intelligence. The counseling center sat on the edge of town, tucked between a shuttered laundromat and a liquor store with bullet holes in its neon signs. I parked across the street and watched. An hour passed before he stepped out. Hargreaves, same stiff posture, same immaculate coat, same eyes that looked at the world like it disappointed him. He locked the door, checked his watch, and started walking toward an old silver sedan that didn't match a doctor's salary. A subtle life, a quiet life, a life built around grief and resentment. I stepped out of the shadows. Evening, Doc. He froze, slowly turned, and the moment he saw me, the cut, the limp, the refusal to stay dead, his face drained of color. You, he whispered. Yeah, me. His eyes darted around, calculating exits. There weren't many. What do you want? He asked, voice brittle. The truth, he swallowed. About what? I held up the toxicology report. The streetlight made the paper glow like a confession. About why you tried to kill me. He stared at the page, at me, at the patch, at everything except the weight of his own guilt. I didn't, he stammered. Don't lie, I said softly. I have already survived your first attempt. Don't make me walk through your excuses, too. His shoulders slumped like a man finally cornered by his own sins. It wasn't supposed to. He inhaled sharply. I thought you were all the same. Because bikers killed your son. His jaw trembled. He wasn't a criminal, he whispered. He wasn't part of that world. He was a child. And the bullets that killed him came from a gang wearing patches just like yours. I felt the shift inside him. Grief rotting into judgment, pain turning into prejudice, morality dissolving under loss. That wasn't us, I said. Wrong club. Does it matter? His voice cracked. You're all poison. Funny thing to hear from a man who tried poisoning me. He backed toward his car slowly, hands trembling. Not with fear, with conviction. The kind that blinds men. I rid the world of one violent criminal, he said. No one would have missed you. His words were the final click of a lock. Truth revealed, intent exposed. But vengeance, that would come later. Tonight, I just needed him to understand that the man he tried to erase didn't vanish. He stood right here, breathing, watching, remembering. I stepped closer, my shadow swallowing his. You made one mistake, Doc. He blinked. You picked the wrong biker. Hargreaves' breath hitched. He reached for his car door, slipped inside, and sped off into the night like he could outrun what was coming. But the road is long, and revenge rides silent until it strikes. Tomorrow I would finish this. Tonight, I let him live with the truth that his nightmare had survived, and was now coming for him. I didn't go after Hargreaves that night. Revenge taken too fast never lands clean. It burns hot, then fizzles, leaving you with nothing but ash, in the same hole you started with. No, this kind of thing needed clarity, needed quiet. Needed the kind of cold patience you learn only after losing enough brothers to know rage as a poor navigator. So I waited until dawn. The sky was the color of bruised metal when I rolled out of the clubhouse lot. My legs still throbbed, but I'd pushed worse pain further and longer. The engine's rumble beneath me was steady, grounding, familiar. It reminded me that I was alive, and that someone had tried to change that. The toxicology report sat folded inside my pocket, warm from my body heat, heavy with purpose. Hargreaves lived in a neighborhood that tried real hard to pretend it wasn't part of the same world as the rest of us. Trees trimmed within an inch of their lives, driveways pressure washed until they sparkled, mailboxes straight as soldiers, a place where people believed their money could build walls high enough to keep the chaos out. They were wrong, of course. Chaos finds its own roads. His house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, lights still off, curtains drawn tight. I parked the bike a block away and walked the rest, boots crunching lightly on the pavement. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, just a thin ribbon of gold stretching across the horizon like a promise or a warning. I rang his doorbell once. I didn't have to ring twice. Through the glass pane I saw movement. hesitant, uneasy, like he already knew who stood on the other side. When he opened the door, he looked smaller than before, less like a doctor, more like a man who'd spent the night wrestling with ghosts. The tiredness under his eyes wasn't from lack of sleep, it was from the weight of guilt he'd finally stopped hiding from himself. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "You shouldn't have tried killing me," I replied. His lip twitched, not in anger, but in resignation. I wasn't thinking clearly." "No," I said. "You were thinking very clearly. That's the problem." I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. He didn't stop me. Maybe he knew he had no right to. Maybe he'd run out of excuses to stand behind. His living room smelled like old books and grief. Framed photos lined the mantel, his son, frozen forever at 17, smiling with a brightness the world never deserved. I felt something shift inside me. Not sympathy, not forgiveness. Just the cold understanding that pain can make even good men dangerous. Hargreaves stood across from me, hands shaking at his sides. "What do you want from me?" he asked. I pulled the toxicology report from my pocket and tossed it onto his coffee table. The paper fluttered down like a spent bullet casing. "I want you to read it," I said. His eyes flicked to the page. He hesitated, but in the end, he sat down and picked it up. His lips moved silently as he read line by line, number by number, the truth unfolding like a noose around his own neck. When he reached the final margin, the one that confirmed the mix was lethal, his breath hitched. He didn't look at me. Couldn't. "It was wrong," he whispered. "I know that now." "You knew it then," I corrected. He closed his eyes, shoulders trembling. "I thought I was preventing more violence, more deaths. I thought maybe if one man who lived by that life didn't walk back onto the streets, the world would be better for it. And you took it upon yourself to be judge, jury, and executioner." His eyes finally met mine. They were wet, but not with pity, just a kind of broken acceptance. "I failed my son," he said. "I couldn't save him. And when I saw you walk into that ER, the patch, the leather, the scars, I thought I was seeing the kind of man who killed him." I stepped closer until he had to tilt his head to keep looking at me. "And now?" I asked. "Now I see I was wrong." The silence that followed wasn't soft. It was sharp, cutting between us like the edge of a blade. I let it linger, let him feel the fullness of its weight, because truth without consequence is just a story. "I'm not here to hurt you, Doc," I said finally. His eyes widened in surprise, relief, confusion, a mix of all three. "But I'm not letting you walk away from this clean," I continued. "You tried to take a life, my life, and there's a price for that." He swallowed. "What price?" "You're going to the board, you're reporting yourself, every detail, every step, every pill you switched, and you're going to resign before they have the chance to fire you." Fear flickered across his features. "If I do that, my career, everything I've built." "Your son's dead," I said softly. "You don't get to build your redemption on the bodies of men you think deserved it." He covered his face with his hands, breathing hard. When he lowered them again, something had changed. Not strength, not courage, just the acceptance that the road he'd chosen had finally caught up with him. "I'll do it," he said. "All of it." I nodded once. "Good." I turned toward the door, the morning sun bleeding into the room like truth finding its way into dark corners. "Snake," he said behind me. I stopped but didn't turn. "Why didn't you kill me?" I let the question hang. Then I answered the only way I knew how. "Because I'm not the monster you painted me to be." Outside, the air felt lighter, cleaner. Not because justice had been served, not fully, not perfectly, but because truth had finally been dragged into the light, kicking and screaming. I walked back to my bike, swung a leg over, and started the engine. Its roar filled the quiet street, a reminder that the road still had miles left for me. Hargreaves would face consequences, not the outlaw way, but the world's way. And sometimes that's a harder fate. As I rolled out of the cul-de-sac, I glanced once in the mirror. His silhouette stood in the doorway, small and shaken. Good. He'd spend the rest of his life remembering the man he tried to erase, and the fact that I let him live to face the truth. And as for me, the road welcomed me back like an old friend, scarred, merciless, and honest. The kind of honesty no doctor could ever prescribe.